This car will hit the ground at a speed of 35 miles per hour. A man would reach the same speed at a moment of impact if he jumped out of a fourth-floor window. It's not the speed as such that is dangerous. The danger lies in the impact, when the kinetic energy of the mass is retarded. The important thing here is how this retardation can be prolonged, or in other words, how the sudden deceleration can be delayed. In a collision, the car acts as a safety net. It's designed to absorb kinetic energy, to prolong retardation as much as possible. A car doesn't have to be dull to be safe. In actual fact, the opposite is true. The driver's sensory perception, a car's road-holding qualities, and its impact-absorbing properties together form a safety chain. It is the message that a driver receives at the wheel which allows him or her the opportunity to act quickly and correctly. The seat is the driver's communication link with the car chassis. That is, the car's road-holding characteristics. Through the seat, the driver feels how the car reacts when he accelerates, brakes, and swerves. It is such capabilities that is the car's active safety potential, which helps the driver to avoid accidents. In such a way, you could say that the majority of accidents never happen. But there is a point where the laws of physics dictate how the car behaves. And there's also a limit to the skill of the driver. When this limit is reached, then you have a collision. Most road accidents occur at speeds below 30 miles per hour. A head-on collision between two cars, each traveling at 30 miles per hour, is the same as driving into a barrier at 30 miles per hour, which is what the government agencies have decided the car must be capable of withstanding without the occupants sustaining serious injuries. Some makes of cars manage this at 35 miles per hour, even though the kinetic energy of the car is then nearly 40% more. At these speeds, the occupants are subjected to severe stresses. The safety of a car in a collision is based on the assumption that all occupants are wearing a seatbelt. In such a case, the car's passive safety system can relieve the occupants of most of the stress. A collision of 35 miles an hour is over in 0.2 of a second. That is to say, 200 milliseconds. 200 milliseconds is the time the car has to absorb the kinetic energy and reduce the stress on the occupants. The collision begins at the moment the bumper touches the barrier. This sets off a long chain of reactions, all of which have the purpose of prolonging the retardation. 15 milliseconds later, the system of sensors is triggered. The car is deformed 20 centimeters. 17 milliseconds, the belt tension is activated. The belt tension winds in the slack caused by clothes and the slack that is always present in the reel, so that the belt immediately restrains the wearer and its elasticity can come into play. 18 milliseconds, deformation is 28 centimeters. The airbag is activated. The airbag should be regarded as supplementing the seat belt. It serves the same purpose, to arrest and successively delay the retardation. The airbag requires no action on the part of the occupants. It is activated automatically in a collision, which corresponds to driving into a barrier at 15 miles per hour or more. With a seatbelt, you have to strap yourself in. Seatbelts, both with and without a belt tensioner, are more effective than an airbag. But the best protection is a combination of seatbelt and airbag. "30 milliseconds. The deformation process reaches the engine, which begins to be compacted. The engine must not penetrate into the passenger compartment. The car is built with a safety cage which encloses the passenger compartment. This is what collision technicians call the survival space. That's why the car is designed with energy-absorbing zones at the front and the rear. In the collision laboratory, the computer calculations are checked to see whether they coincide with what actually happens. In different types of collisions, the bodywork absorbs the energy smoothly and successively. Other criteria apply if the car rolls over. Then it is the strength and rigidity of the body and windshield pillars which preserve the survivor space. Rigidity and not crushability is also desirable in the case of side collisions. Side collisions are by far the most dangerous type of accident. And that is a problem for the entire automotive industry because the deformation zone is so small. The car must then prevent penetration into the passenger compartment through the stability, strength, and rigidity of the body. Above all, in the side pillars and the door sills. Using computers, it's possible to simulate the stresses involved. By examining different designs on the computer, it's possible to arrive at the collision behavior which best protects the car occupants. 35 milliseconds. Deformation is now 50 centimeters. The dummies are beginning to move. Now they have 70 centimeters in which to survive. That is the distance to the instrument panel. 40 milliseconds. Deformation is now 55 centimeters inside the car. The airbag is inflated. The elasticity of the seatbelt progressively retards the occupants. There's no difference in collision behavior between adults and large children sitting on special cushions, for example. The children also utilize the elasticity of the seatbelt. For smaller children, strapped in rear-facing children's seats, the collision follows a different pattern. These children first utilize the entire deformation zone, and then the safety belt on the rebound. This is the safest way of riding in a car. 50 milliseconds. Deformation is 65 centimeters. The driver makes contact with the airbag, which starts to be compressed. 65 milliseconds. The steering wheel mounting is compressed. The steering wheel mounting is also designed to absorb energy during the deformation process. 75 milliseconds. Deformation is almost complete. Now the occupants are subjected to maximum stress. 90 milliseconds. Deformation of the car is complete, and the vehicle is 75 centimeters shorter. The occupants have still not reached their most forward point. Their retardation is still in progress. 95 milliseconds. The car now begins to rebound. The occupants reach their most forward point. 120 milliseconds. The airbag has done its work. As far as the car is concerned, the collision process is over. For the occupants, the rebound remains. 150 milliseconds. The seat backs and head restraints begin to smoothly catch and support the occupants. 200 milliseconds. And the collision is over for the occupants too. If they had fastened their seat belts, the chances are good that they would have survived the collision completely uninjured. But it's not over for the collision technicians. Now the analysis begins. It's a fact that many different types of collision tests can only reflect a small part of what happens in real-life crashes. SAAB collects details about all serious collisions in Sweden involving SAAB cars and evaluates the damage to the car, the injuries to persons, the relationship between speed, direction, and collision point, and whether the belts were correctly fastened, etc. The results tell the collision technicians whether the safety systems work in real life. A crashed car is not a beautiful sight, but it isn't supposed to look beautiful after a crash. What is supposed to happen is that the safety chain has worked. The whole idea is that we will have saved your life in 0.2 of a second, 200 milliseconds.